There are a lot of guys with urinary difficulties and they ignore their problems for a long time before seeking care. Well, Michael's not one of these guys. He has been dealing with the urinary difficulties for a while and he has agreed to share his journey regarding what he went through. So, thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Let's begin from many years ago. You were seeing another urologist. You were in a different state.
Yes.
What was going on back then?
Back then, I had had my. Oh, let me think.
They were giving you a medication.
Yes, I couldn't. I couldn't urinate. I had a problem with that, and they put me on Flomax,
Hmm.
and I started taking that. So the doctors started checking me out, and they did the same thing with checking my bladder to see how much was left in there after I urinated, and it was bad enough to where I did have to take the medication.
And then what happened? How did you end up here?
Actually, we had to get out of California, so
I don't blame you.
yes. So we moved here, and I had I needed a prescription, and I checked to see what doctors were in the area, and I come up with your name. And so we came down, and I came down and seen you, and you did all this with the flow and how much was left in my bladder and so forth. And so we started checking my bladder, and you checked it, and you found something there that shouldn't have been there. And we had surgery, and I'm not sure what that surgery was called.
That's okay. Let's go back a little bit.
Sure.
What were you experiencing when you started taking tamsulosin, or even before you started taking tamsulosin, generic Flomax?
Actually, this started when I had my gallbladder taken out,
Mm.
and I was on all kinds of pain medication for it before I got the surgery done. And it created it in my mind, it created me not being able to urinate, and it was really tough and painful. And my doctor, my personal doctor, he had prescribed the Flomax, and I didn't take it. My wife wanted me to try the I guess the natural way,
Yes.
and that didn't work.
Yeah, which has been studied in the past, and that natural medication, saw palmetto, has not shown to be effective.
hmm Well, it surely wasn't effective with me. I on a Friday, it had been a week. I got out of the hospital on a Monday, and I went clear till Friday, and then I finally said I was going to take a Flomax, and not 2 hours later, I was going well. And so I just stayed on that, and for when I would have to get a prescription, whatever, I go back and see the urologist. And but coming here, it was pretty much the same thing. I needed a prescription.
When you stopped taking tamsulosin, what were you feeling? How did that make you feel?
After my TURP surgery.
Before your TURP, when you were looking for a urologist?
Oh, I actually I had the prescription from my personal doctor, and I never stopped after that.
Very good. Before you started taking tamsulosin, specifically, what were you feeling with your urination?
Before,
Yes.
it was peeing a lot,
Okay.
uh, all day, at night, maybe 2, 3 times a night, getting up. Other than that, I learned to live with it, and that was the wrong thing to do.
A lot of guys learn to live with it. I see patients like you all day, every single day. It sounds like what you're saying is you had a lot of frequency of urination, also getting up at night to pee before you started tamsulosin.
Very true.
And then you were started on tamsulosin by your urologist in California, which was continued after you came out here in Arizona, and then finally you started coming over here
Yes.
to see me. But what led to that visit initially? Because it sounds like you were doing okay with the medication.
Well, I thought I was doing okay. It seemed to help, and I figured, well, they put me on it. I need to be on it. And then when I came to see you, you did say, well, you stay on it, but you warned me. You said I need to have something done, whether it be with my prostate because my prostate was enlarged, and I kept putting it off, putting it off. I think that was 3 years ago. I had my bladder surgery, and so just this September I had the TURP surgery. So yeah, it took some convincing, but the amount of times I'd have to get up and how frequent I would pee, and no flow, really. I finally took your advice, and it
You're,
worked.
you're saying that despite taking tamsulosin for many years, you're still having a lot of symptoms, and symptoms got worse. And
Yes.
and when you said you bladder surgery, you're probably talking about cystoscopy when I looked in your bladder several years ago.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and back then I warned you that you had a big prostate that was blocking your flow, but
Mhm.
then you said, I'm gonna wait. And eventually you came back, and I looked in the bladder again, and I showed the damage that was already done
Yes.
by the enlarged prostate to the bladder. And at that time, you were having worsening symptoms despite taking medication. You saw the damage in the bladder, and that's when he said, okay, I'm going to have something done. And you had a TURP, a roto-uter,
Yes.
as we said. So a lot of people are very afraid of this medication, this surgery. What was your experience?
My experience was the worst part of it was the catheter, going home with the catheter.
And how long did you, first of all, did you have to stay overnight in the hospital?
No, I did not.
And how long did the catheter stay inside you? You said you were bothered by the catheter. How long did that stay inside you?
Well, it came in first thing in the morning the day after the surgery, and the surgery was in the afternoon, so not even 24 hours.
So less than 24 hours the
Yes.
catheter was out. And to give a little bit more background, you were on a blood thinner that we had to stop before surgery. So that kind of made it a little bit more challenging or slightly riskier because anytime someone's on a blood thinner, I worry about bleeding afterwards.
Sure.
And sometimes I can do this procedure without leaving a catheter. But I left it in you because I wanted to make sure your recovery was perfect.
It 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 definitely worked. I had trouble with it getting up during the night because I was really having to urinate quite often, or I wasn't having to urinate; it was urinating for me, and I was having to dump the bag. But no, once it came out, it stung urinating, but it got less and less, and finally, it's just like normal urination now. It's great.
So, how many times are you getting up at night to pee?
At one time, maybe.
Okay, so that's a big change.
Oh, yes, yes.
What about during the day? You had that frequency of urination in the past.
As I told you, it depends on how much I drink now. And if I drink a lot of water, which I've been doing a lot, I urinate probably. I think there was times when I was urinating for 24 hours more than 12 times a day. And if I drink a lot of water, it's still 8 to 12 times a day.
Well, that's normal. When you drink
Yes.
more water, and if you're not sweating it off, you're going to pee more.
Okay, well that helps me feel better
Yeah.
because, but yeah, if I just drink like I used to, I'm not sure. I'd have to start drinking, not drinking so much water, and try it out and see how many times I would have to urinate during the day. It'd probably be. I've done a little research, and it says about 8 times a day you should urinate. And if I could do that, and I don't know why I couldn't if I don't drink so much water.
Yeah, when you drink more water, you're going to pee more. So there's really no right number of times that we pee. It depends on your hydration status and the amount of fluid that you drink. But on average, we pee about 7 times a day.
Okay.
So that what you're saying is not uncommon after this procedure.
Okay.
A lot of guys are worried about not being able to control their urine after the surgery. What was your experience?
There were times when I felt like I had to go so bad that by the time I got to the toilet, it was starting to leak, or I would sit down on the toilet and it would start to go as I'm sitting down, but not very many times. It's very nice now. I can control it. There's no problem. No problem.
Sounds like after your recovery, you're back to normal.
This is a new normal. Yes, yes. I haven't had normal urination for years now, and in the last 4 months, it's back to that normal.
And how has going through this surgery changed your quality of life?
Oh, it's amazing. It's not even. I can't even explain how different it is to only get up once at night and during the day, and actually I feel like I'm getting rid of everything, but I'm probably not, as you told me with the flow test today. But that's probably my weakness in not really training my bladder like it should have been after the TURP surgery.
Or on the other hand, you could have waited too long before you intervene surgically so that the damage to the bladder has occurred and it's having some lasting effects, making you not empty your bladder. So that could also be happening.
Oh, that's very true. You're the doctor. I wouldn't know that. I trust you.
That's why we're going to keep an eye on that situation.
Okay.
And the main thing is you have not had any infections despite not completely emptying your bladder. And I try to implore my patients to intervene sooner than later instead of waiting and waiting. The bladder gets damaged because of the obstruction caused by the prostate. Now, having gone through this, Michael, what would you tell guys who are suffering with urinary difficulties?
To not wait. Get to see a doctor, and if the doctor says you need to have this done or that done, follow his advice.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, doctor.
So, the moral of the story is seek care sooner than later and don't wait before your bladder gets injured.
Amen.